A swift, cool breeze blew through the curtains into the highest room of the royal palace, the room of Queen Ileana. Her faint, sobbing cries now echoed in the loneliness. The drops of her tears moistened her cheeks as the cool gust made them pale and frigid. In her hands she clutched the silken handkerchief, too wet to soak her tears anymore. It was late, time for her to rest, but Ileana couldn't fall asleep when her heart ached so much. Her mind now felt numb. It had been hours she had been weeping, unable to let out her sorrows. "Your Majesty, may I come in?" "Come in, Ophelia." Hearing the faint cries of the queen, Ophelia, her servant, had come to check up on her. She walked in the room holding a lantern and a tray of figs, pomegranates, and cheese. Ophelia felt heartbroken just seeing the queen's red, teary eyes. "Your Majesty, don't cry like this," Ophelia said as she sliced the cheese and fruit and presented it to her. "This will help you sleep. You haven't had any dinner." "I'm not in the state to eat, Ophelia." Ophelia picked up a comb from the dressing table and began brushing through Ileana's hair. "Your Majesty, you will fall ill." "How can a woman live like this, Ophelia? Every passing day makes everything worse. It makes me feel worthless." "Your Majesty, you're the queen. It doesn't befit you to say such." "And what can the queen do about this?" "Nothing but weep, Ophelia. I'm helpless. I possess no power to change anything." "Your Majesty, perhaps there is something you can do." "What? Why don't you make a sacrifice to the god Asha Louise? She is the one who relieves all pain, the one who removes all grief. If there is anyone, it is the goddess who can help you." "A sacrifice to the gods?" "Yes, Your Majesty, but in order to reach her, you'll have to speak with the oracle at Dodona, with an offering for Asha Louise. Then make immediate preparations and send word to the oracle to come to the palace." "Your Majesty, the oracle doesn't leave the groves of Dodona. Those who want to seek the blessings of the gods have to travel there to meet her." "Very well then, we shall travel to Dodona tomorrow." And so, the next day, Queen Ileana ordered for hefty platters of gold and jewels, vessels of honey, olive oil and milk, fruit and barley brimming to its top as a gift and offering for the goddess Asha Louise to be prepared. That afternoon, she, along with Ophelia and a few other servants, traveled to Dodona with carriages loaded. Word was, the oracle lived in a small cabin in the groves of Dodona by the sacred oak tree. "Your Majesty, there it is, the sacred oak tree. Shall I request her to come out?" "No, I shall go myself." Queen Ileana got down from the carriage and walked to the oracle's home, knocking on the door. An old woman opened and stared at her and Ophelia. "I am Queen Ileana from Ioannina. I've come to seek your help to call upon the goddess Asha Louise." The old woman let out her trembling hands and held Ileana's. "The gods only speak to those who pleases them. I've brought many offerings, and I'm willing to sacrifice." Ophelia ushered her hands, calling forth the numerous servants who brought the heavy platters and placed them in front of the cabin. "Asha Louise surely helps those in misery. If she deems your offerings worthy, she will bless you." Shaking, the old woman walked out, not to the gifts, but to the old oak tree by her home. She stood there and began chanting. Ileana watched as a sudden gust of wind rustled through the leaves. She noticed there were small pieces of bronze hanging from the branches. As the winds became stronger, a shrilling noise ran in the air. The weather seemed to be getting quite harsh, and Ophelia became fearful lest something occur to the queen. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should leave." Raising her hand, Ileana commanded everyone to stay in their places. All of a sudden, the old woman turned around. The night fell silent once again. "Your request has been heard. Return to your home and seek the pleasure of Asha Louise. You shall soon receive what you desire." Queen Ileana returned home, desperately waiting for the goddess to answer her prayers. Over the days, she offered sacrifices, setting a dove free to the goddess every night. She stood there staring at the night sky, calling out to her. "Asha Louise, I call to you for your help. Only you possess the powers to assist me." However, there was nothing but silence. But Ileana didn't lose faith. She continued to try to please the goddess. Until, many days later, on the night of the full moon, she stared up at the skies again and called out, "Asha Louise, when will you remove my pains? When will you take away my grief?" Ileana sighed and turned to go back to her room, when suddenly she heard a strange chiming tune of the winds and a soft voice call out to her, "O mortal, do you not know patience is a test of faith?" Ileana turned around in shock, absolutely mesmerized by the glowing brightness of the goddess standing in the light of the moon. "Asha Louise, forgive me, for I have been impatient for your blessings. It is only you who can help me. I've been watching you, Ileana. I can see the grief in your heart. This is why I call on to you. I seek your help desperately. Bless on me, O Asha Louise. Wash away my pain. Remove from me my misery. Fear not, O mortal, for the heart of Asha Louise feels for the weak and feeble. I shall bestow on you what you desire." The goddess stretched forth her hands together. Ileana watched in amazement as her hands filled with the illuminating liquid. It suddenly appeared as a golden bowl filled to its brim that she placed in Ileana's hands. "This is the water of the full moon, the cure to all your grief. It will wash away your pains. You shall no longer have that which makes you miserable." Ileana clutched onto the bowl, bowing her head to the loving goddess. But before she could say anything more, the goddess disappeared in front of her eyes. Ileana rushed back to her room and carefully placed the bowl by her bedside when her husband, King Heron, entered the room. "Have you not gone to sleep yet? I was waiting for you." Heron walked up to Ileana and stared at her. "Is there something you want to tell me?" "No. Is it unusual for your wife to wait for you? You must be exhausted. I don't want to keep you up." Heron laid down in bed and Ileana beside him. It wasn't long before he fell asleep. Ileana hurried to take the bowl Asha Louise had given her. She took a deep breath. From tonight, her misery shall end. King Heron woke up startled, drenched in water. "Ileana, what do you think you're doing?" "It is for us, Heron. You will be mine forever. Only mine." "What did you pour on me? What is happening? Ileana!" Ileana watched as Heron's skin began to illuminate. She watched, overjoyed in happiness. She would finally have what she wanted. But when Heron began to shout, Ileana stumbled back in horror. Heron began to disperse into dust. Ileana ran to hold him, but Heron's hand disappeared in her palms. No. It had been nearly 10 years since Ileana married Heron. Over the days at the palace, she fell in love with him and cared for him greatly. But Heron wasn't faithful to her. The king was a devoted worshipper of Zeus, the father of the gods, and he followed his way of life. Heron fancied many women of his liking, and of course, none could refuse the king. Ileana felt betrayed and heartbroken. Did her love have no value? But there was nothing she could do about it. She wasn't married to any ordinary man. She was married to the king, who did what he pleased. But she didn't want to leave him. She loved him dearly, and she wanted him to love her back, and only her. But things only got worse, because Heron didn't care for what Ileana felt. "Your Majesty, the king is occupied. He will not be seeing anyone right now." "Have you forgotten who you're speaking with?" "It is the king's orders, Your Majesty." "I command you to open the door." "Yes, Your Majesty." Ileana cried every time she discovered Heron had been with another woman. Every time she could still smell their perfume on him. She cried herself to sleep every night, unable to bear the grief any longer. She was hurt, and she wanted this to end. No. No! Ileana cried, falling to her knees as her husband disappeared in front of her eyes. Staring at the full moon glowing in the sky, Ileana came to realize what she had done. Asha Louise, she who washes the grief away, she who casts away the pain, she who removes the source of sorrow. You shall no longer have that which makes you miserable. Ileana ran out under the moon and yelled to the heavens, Asha Louise, return to me all my pain. Return to me all my grief. But was it too late? Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.